I wanted to be a good leader and toe the company line, so to speak. What I didn't understand was the system
Mm.
was different than what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Like the reality, right? And I think trust is a perfect example.
Mm.
I was out of the corporate workplace as an employee. I mean, I've been consulting now for 8+ years. And I would have no issue with people working wherever they needed to work.
Mm.
However, if it had been mandated from, the higher folks above that your people need to be tapping in their card 3 days a week, otherwise, Carolyn, your ass is on the line.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, I'm complicit in a system that doesn't really align with my values.
Yes.
I think there are a lot of people out there, Blaire, like that.
Yes. And I think that certainly that causes a huge amount of distress.
Right.
So when there is that tension, that moral distress between what you believe is right and the system in which you operate, where you don't feel you can be yourself, or you don't feel you can speak up about the system, that creates a huge amount of stress. And we know that there is a lot of stress. And the stress is put down to, oh, we're asking a lot of our people at the moment and they're putting in long hours. I don't think that's the stress. I think the stress is the moral distress of that misalignment. So that's why I think it's more fundamental than just let's run some resilience courses and let's do some lunchtime yoga. The system has got to change. So there's that moral distress. And then there's also, it's your livelihood, right?
Right.
It's your job. And that is also the way it is. There's a saying, life's a B word.
Yep.
And then you die. And I think people kind of were like, well, but it's work though, isn't it? Like, this is what you have to do. A lot of people aren't saying, do we? Do we have to do it like that? Just because they're doing it like that, do we? And just to pick up on one other thing, which goes back to this idea of the system. For me, management is about making the best of the situation. So a lot of what's called leadership is actually management. It's about being a good manager, being thoughtful and towards your people. It's about trying to do the best for them and for the organization, but within the system. For me, what leaders do is they look systemically, and then they try to address the systemic root causes of a lot of presenting issues. They don't just pick off the presenting issues one by one. So instead of saying, well, we've got a bit of stress over here, let's do some resilience training, they say, well, we've got a bit of stress over here and we've got some stress over here and I'm stressed and we're getting a lot of sick leave. What is fundamental that is also leading to poor engagement scores, high turnover of staff? For some reason, Gen Zs don't want to work here. We don't have diversity. All these other presenting issues. Is there something at core? And I think the thing at core is we're operating an industrial age model in a post-industrial world.
I really admire that definition, Blaire, between management and leadership. I agree completely with you. And I think what this part of our conversation is connecting me to is back to we need the punks. We need that connection with our inner values and beliefs to really challenge these old systemic, old-fashioned ways of working.
Yeah, that's right. And if we don't do it, then we are leaving that to the next generation, or maybe even the generation after that, by which time, the world is going to be different again.
Yes.
So we have a responsibility, I think. In fact, it's more urgent than that because, our world is really not in a great place. No. So in the book, I quote the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is a report that comes out every year on levels of trust in authority figures.
Yep.
I think it's been running for 20 years. It always is worse every year.
Yep.
And, it's completely unsustainable as a planet for us to live in a world where we don't trust politicians, we don't trust the media, we don't trust businesses, and we don't trust NGOs. That means we don't trust anyone. We only trust our family, maybe the person we sit next to at work. Life becomes very small and therefore hugely dysfunctional. So how do you live a healthy and meaningful life? How do you create a healthy planet for our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren in a dysfunctional world like that gets worse every year? You can't. So the responsibility to do something about that is actually huge. It's much bigger than I want to be a nice boss for the people that work in my team.
Right.
It's I have a part to play in changing the world.